Hello and welcome to my guide for painting the Demon Hunter from Crooked Dice Miniatures. As you can see, the first thing I've done is sprayed him with some matte black spray from Colourforge. Next I used some Dryad bark to paint his trousers. I also used it for the butt of his boomstick. And then for his shotgun holster I used some Rhinox hide. These areas were then washed with some Agrax Earthshade. And while that wash dried I used some Mephiston Red to paint his chainsaw, which I then washed with some Carroburg Crimson. Once the wash on his trousers have dried, I then went ahead and did a 50-50 mix of Gothor Brown and Dryad Bark. And this was followed by the same mix, but at a 30-70 ratio in favour of Gothor Brown. I did the same for the shotgun, however I did use a little bit more of the Gothor Brown just for the final highlight. I then did a 50-50 mix of Rhinox Hide and Catachan Flesh for the gun holster, followed by a 50-50 mix of Catachan Flesh and Blood Reaver Flesh for the final highlight. I used Kantor Blue to start painting his shirt, which I washed with some Drakenhof Nightshade. I then highlighted the chainsaw with a 50-50 mix of Mephiston Red and Evil Sunz Scarlet, followed by Evil Sunz Scarlet just by itself. For the detailing on the chainsaw I used Abaddon Black, and I also used it for his belt as well. I then highlighted those areas with some Corvus Black, followed by a 50-50 mix of Corvus Black and Eshin Grey. I then used some Iron Hand Steel to paint the tips of the chainsaw, and Iron Warriors for the barrel of the boomstick. I then washed both these areas with some Nuln Oil. I then moved back to the shirt and did a 50-50 mix of Kantor Blue and Atolic Blue. This was followed by the same mix but at a 30-70 ratio. Then Atolic Blue just by itself. I'm definitely sure I'm pronouncing that name wrong, but then that's why I put them on the screen. And then finally for the last highlight, a 50-50 mix of Atolic Blue and Matte White. This is just for the sort of really tips and finer edges. Next I used Bugman's Glow to paint all of his skin, which I then washed with some Bugman's Glow. While that was drying I used some Steel Legion Drab on his shoes, and washed those with a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. Before I move back to his skin, I'm going to paint his eyes to get them out of the way, and that way it's also easier for making any mistakes to tidy things up. And for that I use some Abaddon Black, followed by Matte White, and then lastly Abaddon Black again for the pupils. Finally moving back to the skin, I used a 50-50 mix of Bugman's Glow and Cadian Flesh Tone. This is followed by Cadian Flesh Tone just by itself. Then a 50-50 mix of Cadian Flesh Tone and Kislev Flesh. And then finally Kislev Flesh just by itself for the absolute peaks and tips. Ash has black hair, so I used Abaddon Black for that, followed by a quick dry brush of Corvus Black. I then highlighted his shoes with a 50-50 mix of Steel Legion Drab and Talon Sand. And once you've based him, however you want to base him, that's him finished. He is a fantastic little model. I absolutely loved painting him. He took no time at all as well, but we'll get into that in a second. If you haven't checked out Crooked Dice Miniatures before, I wholly recommend them. They've got some fantastic stuff on there, and their models are crisp, clean, and almost perfect. But back to this guy, he only took about 2 hours to paint in total, and he is such a fun sort of time to paint, like most of Crooked Dice Miniatures are, to be honest. Again, I can't recommend Crooked Dice enough. They are really phenomenal. Definitely check them out and get some stuff from them. They're fantastic. If you followed this video, which is very unlikely, I can't see many people following this video, thank you so much for watching. I really hope it helped, and give us a subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.